them. And so we're going to discuss what that claim is based in, and also the cognizance of yourselves in rebutting such claims, recognizing that they have no divine origin reality, nor any what you would call sovereign right coming from your, i.e., legitimate or de jure governmental platforms, that they're actually coming from organized agencies of criminality. As most of you know, particularly those of you who are scholars, know the actual political operations on planet Midgard, planet Earth, etc., that has been injuring humanity, particularly for the last, say, thousands of years or in that area. And much of the miseries that have been put upon humanity, particularly since the Napoleonic Wars. And so many of you who are looking to comprehend, say, comprehending the takeover of Iberia, Phoenicia, which we in modern day call Europe, etc., from the ancient Moabites, Canaanites, etc. In modern terms, they would be referred to as Moors. And so there be more clarity on the comprehension of political activities coming from Rome and the Bishopric of Rome through their unum sanctum policies and their doctrine of discovery policies that are exercised in these days, that has pretty much destroyed most of the governments on the world, on the planet, etc. So having a cognizance of that would give you a cognizance of some of the political, economic problems that are facing humanity today, etc. And so we'll share some of that with you, and we'll talk a little bit about it. One of the subjects is death and taxes, and people, for lack of knowledge, have been trained from childhood that the only thing that is permanent or real, etc., or undeniable at Midgard or on planet Earth is death and taxes. So we want to go into that to so that people will have a clear comprehension that it has nothing to do with divinity. It has everything to do with demonology, etc. And in fact, it does. So we're going to present to you, and most of you who come and share with us at the House of Reawakening Minds, you know that we always encourage you to take notes so that you can do cross-reference for yourselves and you can research for yourselves, etc. And logically, you'll find some of these general factors. There's nothing that we haven't really told you before, but because of the political atmosphere and agendas that are taking place in these current days contemporarily, uh, this is certainly relevant for the knowledge of people. And particularly, again, for those who have been attacked by members of the Roman Curia, and these are heads of the different agencies that some of which you are familiar with, that you may have assumed to be legitimate governmental platforms when in fact they never were and are indeed not. And for those of you who, through different writs or responses to the de facto claims of debt waged against yourselves in what you call linguistic capital or connotative linguistics, and myself and Brother Lord Maddox Eel we were having a conversation actually earlier, and we were sharing some of the information just in general conversation, particularly for the things that are taking place today. So I want to give a shout out to him too, for his great research, and because a lot of people know this stuff truthfully, But what you find is many people, they prefer to be liked, and so they will not get into what you will call what they refer to as controversial truths that really help humanity. They'll dance around these issues, etc. And for one, he is one who that I find credible for having the courage to challenge truths and to speak truth on behalf of humanity and in behalf of our people here, particularly in the Western Hemisphere of the Maghreb, under hybrid European occupation known as U.S. democracy occupation, etc. And he's one who, does research also and is willing to speak the truth. So we're just going to share some of the stuff with you, so that the misconception that death and taxes are your fate, that is a false concept, that is a fraudulent concept, that is a de facto concept, that it is a colored concept, that is a prima facie concept, simulacrum, distinguished from that which is real concept. However, it has been living, it has taken life among our people to their detriment and to their injury. So, it just in general, some of these things must be known so that there's a counter or rebuttal, intelligent rebuttal by living people or living men and women who have been listed as stock under the U.S. corporate government person paradigm, etc., and actually bonds put on them, whether you're talking about the marriage certificates, the birth certificates, etc., which are bonds, and the CUSIP numbers, which are used for the routing of the different districts of the Roman Curia operations of the Federal Reserve through the IRS, particularly operating on our land and different humanity. They still think that these people are, just lightly corrupt relative to parties, political ideologies, etc., and still haven't accepted the reality that, in fact, the demon breed of hybrids have actually been operating in government actually for the last 1,000 years, to be honest with you. And then you are aware that many of the people are not aware that there's more than one earth, and that earth simply means inhabited place. So earth means inhabited place. It does not mean this particular inhabited place that we call earth. This particular earth is called Midgard. Midgard, write that down and don't forget it, because as things begin to open up and more is revealed to the people in general, the conversations will change, because your concepts will change, because your information base will change, because much that has been suppressed for the last 1,000 years or so will be opened up. And this is why, and this is how people in some ways will be able to handle better in their comprehension and in their ability to adjust and kind of modify themselves under these pressures that are being put on them by knowing what's real and what has been fake. And so very often people hear us say, de facto, de jure, prima facie, simulacrum, etc. And because we know that a lot of people who, come and share with us at the House of Reawakening Minds don't have an extensive library, because we have been trained to, get rid of our books, particularly after the hybrids enforced the unum sanctum operations with the, indexus librorum prohibitorum and indexus librorum expurgatorius, that the people have been told were the great Christian book burnings, not knowing that these are actually the demon hybrids among us who actually been governing, and they have infiltrated every phase of life for the most part. And all of your major institutions that the people have learned to trust and put their time, their service, their efforts into to make life better, they have not known, and it's hard for people to accept that these institutions are contaminated with the hybrid demon breed. And over the years, they've also recognized that every once in a while, when we're talking about the hegemony of the hybrid Europeans, we'd often just say Europeans, and in these last 7 or 8 years, we've been reminding the people, we're making reference to the hybrid Europeans, and that's not to say all the hybrid Europeans are actually operating on the demonic level. However, it must be understood that in general, and this is not limited to them. However, in general, those who have been operating on the demonic level have pretty much gripped themselves or rooted themselves within the hybrid dramatic tribes, as opposed to less so to the Asiatic African tribes, etc. And so one of the things that we want to remind the people of is we have to start shedding some of the concepts that we have that we've been taught by the dark priesthood via the dogma platforms that have been presented as religion. And so, and this is a reminder to put you in context with what we're dealing with in these days, so that the people can better handle the attacks that are being made on them, both open and covert. And so we're going to read hell, because we already know, when we talked this earlier, when you were making the poster, Dr. Naila, and I was saying to you, I didn't want the fire as a background because the people have been pretty much spooked by that general image when they talk about hell. And the reality is, because of the anthropomorphic instructions that have been promoted upon humanity for the last, hundreds of years, it's kind of difficult for them to recognize that the people who they trusted to redeem them from these negative jinn, din, shaitan, Satan concept, negative beings, dark spirits, etc. Not knowing that those were pretty much the houses of these beings. And of course, it's difficult to get people to look at things realistically, because out of fear, miscomprehension, people sometimes are in denial that the platforms and their conditions are a reflection of failure relative to their concepts, as opposed to the successes that we have been promoting among ourselves in the name of religion. And I always say in the name of religion, because the truth of the matter is, and this is not new, that the masses in general have not been really taught the truth about religion. And so religion in many ways gets a bad name because it has been contaminated by the dark priesthood. And it must be understood that the dark priesthood have always taken anything that is positive and turned it negative. As an example, for instance, when they want to deceive someone, or to bring someone in under a psychic attack, as an example, or they want to approach them politically and produce some destructive ends, they will always bring or present what you would call a pretty face, and whether it's political, physical, etc., or promise of good, and actually do the opposite. Their major operations are based on projection, and that is to present one thing and do the opposite, and at the same time perfect the art of producing that opposition and then again projecting it on someone else, meaning that, as an example, on a more simplistic form or term, say break the window of your neighbor's house and then point to the neighbor down the street, or take or steal something from the neighbor down the street, as an example, some item, then attack someone else and leave the evidence of the item that belongs to another, and then be the mediator between the two while plotting to destroy both sides. And this has been a consistent pattern of the priesthood. And this is again why you will see constantly in dogma systems, even while the priesthood had been raping the people at large, they keep them psychologically fighting between gods and devils without explanations about the origins of those gods and devils. They just use those words loosely. And by the people not knowing the history and the development of the dark priesthood of Rome, etc., they don't suspect them. They look to them for guidance. So we want to talk about, number one, how they've always been using the guilt trip of going to hell if you don't go along with the programs that the priesthood present to you. And this is where the connotative linguistic comes in, because they have presented one thing about hell when hell is actually another. So let's everyone take a pen and paper, which you usually do when you come here with us at the House of Reawakening Minds, and write down hell, Hell. And so we're going to go into ancient jurisprudence, and it's still modern jurisprudence, and show you what it really means. On page 857 of Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence. Hell. Hell is the name formerly given to a place under the executor chamber where the king's debtors were confined. Now, when you go, and for those of you who are scholars, you'll find that also in the Old Rich Dictionary and other older dictionaries of jurisprudence, law, etc. And yet, the priesthood would present hell as a place of fire, under the ground, etc. And while allegorically, in some ways, that had some truth to it, it's not true in the sense that the people have been taught, because it's really dealing with the fact that beneath the chambers of the executors, the king's chambers, etc., they housed people or put people in the ground in dungeons when they did not pay tithing to the priesthood and the lords, etc., who were feudal lords and abusing the people. This was a punishment for them, not unlike the private prisons all across North America that they've been telling the people are actually government prisons, when actually they're the private prisons of actually the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, which you've been told were judges and magistrates, and the attorneys and lawyers that you've been thinking were in place to defend the treaty rights and the constitution rights of the people, when actually they are and have been and are members of the Roman Curia and operatives of hell. And what they do is operate from this perspective. The persons who are claiming to be magistrates and judges have vestment in private prisoner of war camps that they've been calling public prisons, and having the public pay for the buildings of them, but yet they are actually profit centers for human trafficking. including that gives them a locked in and how do you say a body of people to experiment on with biological warfare, biological drugs, vaccines, and other poisons, etc., and also to use for promoting their genocide modification programs, etc., and then make the people pay for it, and also put liens on the estates of the people who go through the system. And the people in general have no idea that these are actually private for profit human trafficking platforms. And that is your modern version of hell, although they still have hell, but it's more expanded in so much as many of you have heard of the military underground facilities that have been operating all across the world, and with many of their operative command centers being at North America under the jurisdiction of the operatives or the Roman Curia members known as the U.S. Congress, etc. That is also the executor's chamber.